Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, February the 24th. It's been a while, frankly, with this Eternal Awakening crossover advertisement. You would think we must be fairly close to that being over at this point. Because, yeah, this fighting game that they are cross-promoting, it's not like they've even scheduled it particularly well where things are happening. It's just more and more of this experience. Meanwhile, the smarter move would certainly be to promote their own story coming out on the front page, but I guess maybe Shadowverse makes some kind of money around that. Let's see, if we look at the battle pass, maybe that's what they're trying to wait for. Battle pass ends March 29th, so you have a whole other month there, and with the battle pass you get cards that seem to be part of the cross promotions too. So they just really signed up for a very long Grand Blue Fantasy cross promotion, which seems weird. Alright. And yeah, Eternal Awakening is the crossover with Grand Blue Fantasy, and we still are opening up packs with the new cards that have come out, so we're on the back half of that at the very least. Although at a certain point, man, I'm not saying too much today. At a certain point, you are kind of running into this situation where Shadowverse itself kind of corrupts itself with card packs and cards potentially being different because of the tie-in with Grand Blue Fantasy. I guess that's not really the case. Like, we should check that and see how true that statement really is. And we still have 126 card packs to buy till we get to the tradables. Which, yeah, we're not gonna get there anytime soon. Let's go ahead and open, I guess, 2 today, because we had that whole week in which we didn't play. For the accountability section today, I am playing Danganronpa. It is kind of slow going, but I'm making progress. I'm about 5 minutes away from the point where I stopped watching Game Grumps, so I am going to start hitting new content, and at that point it is going to probably highlight that I don't pay attention as much as I think I do, or that I maybe am a little bit dumber as far as these murder mysteries go. But honestly, the murder mysteries are kind of incredibly dumb. I went through one more class trial, and once again the class trials are just wrecking me horribly. I didn't come over here and use the vials, which I need to do, but I mostly also have just been like trying to clean up my house, just actually doing some, I guess, spring cleaning before spring actually happens, on top of doing Danganronpa. And so there's a little bit of that still going on. See, yeah, this character feels like it is part of the other game, although it doesn't stand out too extremely weird. If anything, I guess maybe Shadowverse is so varied and it just doesn't have its own established feeling anyways, that you can pretty much add anything to it and nothing feels too crazy. Like this dragon feels a little weird. But a lot of the other stuff kind of doesn't. I mean, it is almost absolutely just anime. Like the generalized, if you've ever seen this in any anime anywhere, it might show up in Shadowverse. This character always looked out of place. But that character also kind of stands out completely by itself. This character kind of is out of place. This character is definitely out of place. I kind of have to wonder if even in Grand Blue Fantasy, being a fighting game, if the characters particularly synergize. At a certain level, I guess it doesn't really matter in a fighting game. This character's same, just out of place. Off theme. Yeah, I could imagine you could have any number of card games that play the same, and then you just relaunched them with new skins, and you could probably get more consistent and better in the second release. If Magic the Gathering decided to create something called Magic the Gathering 2, they could probably take the best, most famous art for every card, every 2/2 bear, and skin that one famous art on that card and not bother to re-release like new prints. Particularly in the case for Magic the Gathering, I feel like you will eventually have to make some kind of decision like that, assuming they don't just go out of business at some point. This character is off model and weird looking, to say the least. Because I have to assume at some point printing card packs is just not going to make sense. If we hit a point where 90 or 80% of all stores are replaced with just Amazon.com or direct shipping of some sort, this character's out of place too. It's all the platinum tier cards because those are the recognizable ones. Even this Wind Fairy doesn't really match with the other fairies we've seen in the game. Yeah, this guy's out of place too. So yeah, if everything is just replaced with direct shipping, at a certain point you stop having the impulse buys, and that could affect a lot of things like candy, but it is definitely going to affect a lot of toys and things that kids beg their parents to buy for them, which would potentially take a card game like Magic the Gathering or a card game like this fully digital. Well, this game is fully digital already, which then becomes an element of whether or not you can really bother to reanimate cards, whether that is something that is worth it because you can get microtransactions, which we'll have to see how microtransactions go. Like, there is many possibilities in the future, certainly, but one possibility is that people stop being so consumerist in America in particular, and in the West particularly, but heck, yeah, all around the world there's a lot of consumerism, and if there's a lot of backlash against microtransactions, then even bothering at some point to skin a game like this and make different skins of cards may not be really worth it. Although at a certain point that may just be the cost of doing business, is to add new free skins to cards. Of course, then you also have the confusion creep with collectible card games as more and more expansions come out. Yeah. And of course, my first thought would be, if I was going to take a game like Shadowverse or Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, is if I was going to make a mod and reskin everything and try and re-release it, I would just use probably anime waifus from like Destiny Child, because yeah, that would keep it fairly limited. Destiny Child in particular, and I won't talk too much about it since I over talk about that game a lot. But yeah, it has, at least at some level, managed to not add that many characters that it could have, and instead it tries to reskin characters under different classes. So you may have, for instance, a fire version of a character, and then you may decide that they may decide, hey, let's have a water version of that character too. And they're doing that with their more popular characters, which saves them a little bit of time on thinking up new personalities, because they do have a little bit of visual novel story elements to them also. Let's see. Keep on playing. I've noticed on my suspender plugin, tiny suspender now, since I set it to use the Chrome native API to discard tabs and save RAM, I can't automatically suspend tabs, so there might be a bit of a problem going on right now. Yeah, I think there is, where I think the live streaming tab maybe is trying to connect or trying to play. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't know if it was or not. It may just be a network problem. I still haven't gotten around to working on the router. I've had more than a significant amount of time as far as burn-in. So we know the new router works, and that pretty much assumes that there's like no big concern there. Let's go ahead and hit this.
I'm so useless.
There we go. That's pretty good. Man, I feel like I'm half asleep. I feel like I sound like I'm half asleep when really I'm not that bad. Although I did wake up to an alarm going off in my house, a different alarm. I think it's my emergency weather radio that I had turned on to do weather alerts, making a very weird alarm. And by the time I got out of bed and started walking around my house looking for it, I couldn't find what was making the alarm, so could be something else. I did, however, certainly check to make sure all the smoke detectors and natural gas alarms and things like that were not going off, because that would be the first thing you would want to check, is make sure you're not accidentally poisoning yourself or burning yourself alive. But yeah, I've otherwise been woke up just fine, and I'm fairly awake. Just maybe not as woken up as I should be to be chatty. And this comes into play, bash and random enemy follower. When we do this. Well, this hasn't been destroyed, so playing that doesn't really do anything. I guess that was the best we could do. Okay. So yeah, I don't think we had any leftover video game news, so we are now back on track. to just cover what came out, and if anything, I even curated a little bit of the video games. What's on Steam, on Twitter in particular, was not being particularly fast about. It was just kind of down. Alright, what do we want to do? Guess you evolved this.
The greater the donation, the greater the blessing.
Okay. So I hit this. And then do this to banish that.
Is that how you treat a lady?
And that. So yeah, we don't have a ton of news today, but we also don't have any real reason to stretch this stream. Like, I still am basically never going to be able to recap the lost week of recording. I still have not done anything to schedule videos. So there's definitely still stuff going on. See, do I want to evolve something? I mean, I guess I could evolve something.
Winds of light, show your might. I've got all the magic I need. Here goes. Is that how you treat a lady?
One more. So yeah, there's definitely stuff still to do.
No way.
Is in my orbit.
So yeah, we should just rush through towards the end. I definitely am in a weird position also with just Danganronpa, because it is something that, well, I'm still probably only 2/3 of the way done with the game, and so there's still more down that level as far as gameplay to actually do. It is going to be a fairly long haul journey. I just finished one class trial that was particularly disappointing. Trying not to spoil anything. A lot of your work, a lot of what was explained, either was kind of explained wrong or just kind of didn't matter anyways. And they pretty much had to do that, or at least they felt the need to do that, so that they could move the overall story forward, and you could focus more on just taking out the moving the main story forward. Alright, hit that. And hit that. Then play that. And we can play that.
I go with the wind.
I didn't know this was going to put it in my hand. Do we have a good motivation to evolve anything? No, not really. Yeah, so let's just go through the video game news. Yeah, Danganronpa is going to be very, very hard to have anything to say as far as the story goes at this point, and I don't think I've particularly even tried to say too much about it in the past anyways. Okay. Alright, so now this would do still just one. I guess hit that. And is there any motivation to evolve? Half the number of amulets destroyed rounded up. Seems like that's a really high requirement. If I play one of these and evolve it, I can banish a character. Alright, well, let's do this to that, I suppose. Then banish that.
I will save you no matter the cost. A painless death is the mercy I can afford you.
And 3 more turns. 2 more turns and this plays, so whatever Anvelt Judgment's canon is might win the game for me, but I'm not sure. Doesn't really feel like it. Alright, so we have a game on Steam. Now, this is a game that we had already seen teased or listed, and it seems like it's getting relisted on Steam. Because I definitely have seen this game before. It's called Fights in Tight Spaces. It's a card-based, as weird as it looks, game with kind of a unique art style where you play the cards and then it enacts the cards in a like monocolor or monochrome, or maybe not mono is the wrong word, maybe just solid color characters, or mostly solid color characters. The thing about this game that struck me is it looked like there was a decent amount of animation that they were putting into it, and effort for what seems like a really silly reason, because if you were actually going to play a card game like this, it's going to be incredibly slow, and it really feels like you're just wasting a lot of resources to animate this or buy pre-made animations for a card game. This is $22.49, and I'll put it, I guess, on the follow list, but I also kind of want to know what happened there. Maybe I saw this prologue that was free, and maybe that's what I saw, because you can see the prologue here is overwhelmingly positive, but it very well may just be a matter of price as it is. Okay. So now this guy will just summon a new version of him. Oh. Well, what happened that it didn't resummon? I have no idea what happened there, but clearly that didn't work the way I had hoped. This can do 2 damage to one character, but won't save me. Only thing that would potentially save me is that.
Every shot is a miracle.
One more turn and I'll be able to play this, but I don't think that's going to be helpful either. Yeah, this may very well have been a case that I saw the prologue and that's where I recognized it. The prologues are increasingly becoming confusion points. How did that do damage? I thought I silenced it. I guess I only silenced it for my turn. Silence, of course, being not a key phrase that's used in anything. Well, let's try Dragoncraft. TechRaptor has an article here. Hackers find TV support for the Nintendo DS Lite. I've also, now that I've got new tabs, I'm back to the minimal scroll bar, which is useful. So apparently a TV out option was something that they were thinking about having for the Nintendo DS Lite. Even back then, I could see a lot of reasons why you wouldn't have bothered to develop that. In particular, that since almost all the games for the Nintendo DS heavily cycled around the gimmicks that Nintendo was pushing for the DS, the touch screen with the stylus and the two screens, and that's just stuff that you can't easily emulate on a monitor with just controller inputs. There are emulation cores certainly that play DS games, and they often just have to pop up a mouse or make do with what they can do. And the fact that it is only the DS Lite shows that this was probably a experiment in particular for developers only, and it was never planned to actually come to the DS lineup because they wouldn't want to lose backward compatibility with games and start having to tell people that specific games are only playable with the DS Lite versus the DS, which would just create a lot of confusion. And eventually we kind of know that they created the Switch, which is where this all actually becomes implemented. Let's see.
I always go with the flow.
Because of course the Switch has TV out, although arguably even the Switch as it is now is not built from the ground up to ensure great compatibility with TV out, because they are still heavily focused on the ability to carry it around and use the screen on the system. And the Switch Lite doesn't have that TV out capability or dock capability, I don't think. Maybe there is some way to actually still use that. Okay. Oh man.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
I should have played that first. Moving on, Game Searcher has an article here. Steam's new controller reporting lets devs know how their games are played, which I guess maybe that was more done with the Steam hardware survey, as they were just kind of generally asking if you play games with a controller. Now it seems like maybe if you opt into the hardware survey, you are directly telling Valve and Steam whether or not you're using a controller or a mouse and keyboard. Although at a certain level it kind of feels like you're gonna have to be fairly careful. Like most people, including me, have a controller plugged into the computer always. That doesn't inherently mean if I'm playing a point and click adventure that I'm using a controller. Or a real-time strategy game, or even like Diablo, those all would be fairly hard games to play with a controller. Also, of course, they couldn't easily detect if you're doing something like I had to do with Fear 2, where I had to bring up good old Joy to Key and use that to map my keyboard input to the controller, because I did not want to play that game with a mouse and keyboard, although frankly I probably would have had a better experience if I had. But yeah, this kind of information is good. It helps, I think, controller players way more than anything else. I think very few game developers of a very small style of games would get a report from that and say, well, we've from our reports seen that most people on PC are playing with mouse and keyboard, therefore we're not going to bother to develop controller support. That would be such a backwards way of thinking that it would be ridiculous, because almost every game developer that makes a PC game has, at least in the back of their head, the idea of releasing it on a console, and we've gotten incredibly better actually about having PC only games starting to be ported to the Switch or Xbox or PlayStation. And yeah, unless you just are an incredibly small developer, there's no argument for that. And you have, like, the Binding of Isaac is a great example of that, as that is an incredibly niche product that is PC focused first and foremost, and yet, while it may have taken many years for the small indie developer to port Binding of Isaac to the Switch, it did come out on the Switch, and yeah, I'm not 100% sure if Binding of Isaac ever did, in any form or any variant of it, actually come out for I'm not sure if any of it actually did come out for the PlayStation or PS or Xbox. See, I'm just gonna pick some things. There we go. That's good enough without actually caring or trying. And of course, if I'm not caring or trying to make a deck, then what's the point in the first place? That is really a point there to highlight how after just the many years of playing Hearthstone and the maybe half a year of playing Magic the Gathering, I'm kind of burned out on collectible card games enough, and I never really got into Shadowverse enough to care. So I probably should just shift to the next level and start looking up some net decks, because clearly I don't have enough time or enough interest to go in here and build custom decks. I just also don't think the Shadowverse cards are wild and crazy enough for you to really care as much as you would like the Magic the Gathering cards, which tend to be a little bit crazier or introduce more key phrases and more wildness. I don't know if it's even worth mentioning this, but here we have a game called Lightwave that's clearly a platforming frustration game where you can also swing. Early access for no reason, $9.89, allegedly full audio. Yeah. Not worth your time to say anything more. We have Tested on Humans Escape Room, which I feel like this is a game that we had already seen. Maybe it's out of early access at this point, but oddly not on the fall list either. $7.49. Maybe Palindrome Syndrome Escape Room. Ah, yeah, I think I did see this one. This was on the following list, and you can see it's very positive. So, seems to me what's happening here is you have a developer that is either reselling basically the same product, or they're trying to make a series of escape room like products. $7.49 is a little too expensive probably for what it's offering, but you know, the bundle gets it down to about $6, I guess. But just on the follow list though. Like one can't consistently deny that there is somebody who seems to like these games, and this game does visually look like it is different rooms, so they are asset flipping other content and not just trying to sell you the exact same game. And while this may be part of a subtitled escape room series, it doesn't seem like there is a particularly long-running or connected thread between the two games, which might be helpful, frankly, to avoid having a series of games and instead have a collection of bespoke games that have a certain level of quality associated to them, although that level of quality at the moment is not very good. TechRaptor has an article here. Super Seducer 3 release date uncertain after Steam blocks the launch. So this would be the first incident in a very long time of Steam potentially saying no to a game. Super Seducer 1 and 2 I think did come out on Steam, and they came off as it seems like the main person is either a very good actor playing a character, or he is a just jerk pickup artist who thinks his games are actually good. Take your pick on which one you think that is. So yeah, there's the games for the likes of it, I don't think are particularly good. I think, if I vaguely recall, Super Seducer 2 went even more extreme than Super Seducer 1 to catch more of the memesters who would buy that game, and all the streamers who would play that game. Interesting. I cut myself somewhere. Oh, wonder how that happened. It's always weird to look down and see you have a scab. Let's see what we want to do. Guess you want to do this and just buff and buff and buff.
My blade is your salvation.
4/4 hit in the turn. If this guy can survive,
Don't look so disappointed.
then I'll wake up and he'll be a 6/6. And then next turn, or a 6/3. Okay. If I summon this to a 7/5, he won't have the ward, which I think I want the ward.
I will rise again.
Then we can play this, which we're going to summon that. Okay, I see a strategy here. And then we can attack there. So yeah, to get back to Super Seducer, it says the original game launched on February 15th, or the Super Seducer 3 was supposed to launch on February 15th after numerous delays and pushbacks. However, on February 11th, the creator, La Ruina, tweeted that Steam had told them they were not sure if they can ship the game at all. Later the same day, La Ruina confirmed Steam had rejected Super Seducer, but had told him that if he submitted a censored version of the game, they would consider rethinking their decision. So, I have to assume that there must have been something in Super Seducer 2 and Super Seducer 3, since it's like full motion videos where he's basically getting people topless or naked at some point. See, according to the Steam page, the devs have taken player feedback on board and turned the sexiness way up in the third game. So yeah, I think he probably is doing straight up live action porn, and that puts Valve in a different position, I suppose, than what they normally run into or have an issue with, which is the level of anime porn out there, or at least 3D models of naked characters that are not real identifiable humans.
I will save you no matter the cost.
So yeah, that must be the issue. If the idea, there's a video here, but I'm not going to show it just in case. Yeah, immediately in the video I see a girl in fishnet stockings, and all the image is focusing on girls' butts. She was in a thong though, she wasn't like bare bottomed in fishnet stockings. Now I'm seeing a girl dropping her panties, although you're not seeing anything. It's zoomed to her feet. So yeah, the live action sexiness, the main character is topless there. In a funny way, he kind of is like a new Ron Jeremy type guy who could be a porn star very easily. In that he looks like a skinny, somewhat relatable character instead of being like overly muscular and overly endowed. I'm sure he's average at best there. It's kind of more the attitude and the things that were said in the previous Super Seducers games that seem to be objectionable, or just playing out a pickup artist's fantasy more than anything, and it seems like they're still going down that way for fantasy fulfillment. And at a certain level, I think there's a lot of people that don't want to support and don't like pickup artist ideas. I think probably I would agree with not supporting pickup artist ideas, because it kind of is based on the idea of manipulating people and being rude to people. But yeah, there hasn't so far been a full live action game with a lot of suggestive imagery, if not full on nudity. The trailer didn't show any full on nudity, but there is yeah, La Runa, the creator, says that the demo would have been an ESRB-M if it had a rating, whereas I'm not sure if the ESRB wouldn't have given it, just because it's a small independent game and adults only. Anyways. But yeah. I think there is probably also an argument that Steam may just not want to do business with La Runa. He probably isn't the most ideal partner And that as much as I decry the idea of censorship, at a certain point, I also decry the fact that there is just like no curation as far as what people want on the Steam storefront. So, yeah, we have seen some fairly consistent garbage show up on Steam, and if Super Seducer is the kind of garbage that Valve doesn't want on their storefront, that's fine. Super Seducer as a game clearly would be better suited if it was on an adult website that that just allows straight up porn, because that's really what you're doing here is you're effectively making a full motion video game that is somewhat like Leisure Suit Larry, where in a world and a time where creating something like Leisure Suit Larry doesn't really make sense. And I just don't know if the main character is in on the joke. Here I'm watching someone play Super Seducer 2 on YouTube and skipping around, and I am definitely not seeing any real sex problems as far as nudity or anything. Yeah. And in all fairness, like, he does say the game is less sexy than a music video, and I kind of agree with him, but then also Epic Games and Good Old Games have said no to Super Seducer 3. It probably is one of those games that would be better suited to be self-sold or sold on an adult site. Like, at a certain point, I guess the question is, what are you really trying to make as a game? What is the gameplay mechanic in the loop here? Because the game is a full motion video game, if it's anything like Super Seducer 1 as I remember it, where it would present you different scenarios and then you would pick one to four dialogue text. So it's basically a branching path, maybe visual novel. I don't even know if it was branching path. I think it kind of just told you you were wrong if you didn't choose the right answers. So it's basically just a visual novel or like a Telltale game. And there's really not any other gameplay mechanic that I know of. And it is mostly just an excuse for La Ruiner to probably pay a bunch of actresses or wannabe actresses or porn stars to be in his movies, which at a certain level, I guess he's getting people work, and there's something to be said for that, at least. And there certainly is a way, if you're very good at writing joke and hoisting the main character on his own petard, which they really don't do in the Super Seducer series, in which you can make a game that is particularly interesting to me, and I think a lot of people. I think the general idea is that you're going to have a sense of justice. I hate to use the phrase social justice, but like there's a sense of moralistic justice. People haven't in the past couple hundred years really enjoyed the idea of a character being a jerk and then getting away with it, and that being highlighted and promoted as good. Even if you were going to try and make a pickup artist an anti-hero, you kind of need to see him go through some hero's journey and suffer. And that the games seem like they're more of a wish fulfillment thing where everything just goes right for the character, and that's not where Leisure Suit Larry went. Leisure Suit Larry had the main character almost always failing and almost always struggling. So, you know, that element is, I think, sorely missing from this idea. But in all fairness, I think that the main problem is, I've said that phrase far too often, I think the main problem is, the fact that it is live action this time. And yeah, I could certainly see Valve not wanting to let more live action troll joke games on their storefront. If anything, I'd like to see Valve and Steam specifically decide to get rid of a lot of the live action troll games, because there's probably 5 or 6 creators of games like that that flood Steam. Unfortunately, those games sell, and I guess they're not so overtly offensive, other than offensive to quality, that it's hard to make the justification to curate those games out. And as soon as Valve goes deep down the well of curation, there's going to be a lot of claims as to why isn't there more curation in general. You would think right now working from home would be kind of the ideal point to reset how a lot of people's jobs work and what a lot of people do. I could easily see if I was like in charge of Valve, I could tell somebody, hey, you're gonna work from home, we want you to look through all the new Steam games, and we want you just to give them a thumbs up or thumbs down as far as whether you think they're quality. You give that maybe to a group of 6 to 12 people, and then you've got just a council of quality of people going thumbs up and thumbs down. Somebody should be looking at those games anyways. I'm not sure we didn't already cover this, but TechRaptor has a review for Cursed of the Dead Gods, which looks like it is kind of a Diablo clone. Even Giant Bomb was talking about how the remaster of Diablo 2 is just kind of a weird thing to do at this point. Like, it's really, really hard to mentally justify going back and playing Diablo 2 at least multiple times, if not even once. I could see myself personally going back and playing it once and then that being it, because it's just such a time commitment, and it's not like they're adding new content or anything to it, which they really couldn't. They're just making the graphics 3D and maybe adding controller support, and that's pretty much it. Higher resolutions might make more sense for a game like that, so if you can play it with like a huge 26:1 widescreen monitor, and that's the native resolution the game engine is running at, that would be interesting, but there's very few people that would ever have a setup like that. And otherwise, there's kind of nothing there. You can't particularly automate the process or speed things up. You could potentially maybe mod it so that there's more damage and like more experience per kill. Yeah, I could see definitely going back and playing Diablo 1 or Diablo 2 with a mod that just doubled or tripled the experience per kill, so that you get very, very close to like level 99 or max level in one playthrough versus playing multiple playthroughs. A certain level, that doesn't probably change too much, because if you did that, you would probably then be shown the level up screen too often, and from what I vaguely recall playing Diablo 2, I think you saw the level up screen fairly quickly. Anyways, talking about this game, it says, welcome to your new roguelike addiction. So they give it an 8.0. Curse of the Dead Gods is extremely addictive roguelike that features deeply rewarding and exciting Combat mechanics, pros, deeply engaging combat, darkly beautiful visuals, intriguing curse system, risky and challenging gameplay. Cons can be overly difficult and a slight lack of diversity, which I assume is diversity in enemies. Yeah, this looks like a game. Wow, this looks like a game I actually want to play. Let me finish a sentence there. Yeah, generally when I say it looks like a game, there's a bit of an insult hidden in that. Right, amulets. So I'll have to... Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Of Mice and Mogies, which seems to be a chase game where you're chasing animals, trying to kill rodents by trapping them. So it's basically a puzzle game. This is $8.49, English and German. Yeah, I don't think that there's enough game here to justify that. It also doesn't seem like there's really a system between what kind of animals can kill other animals. It seems like if you just trap them, you will probably kill them. This is the kind of game that if this had come out in the 90s, this probably would have sold very well at that price. But it just doesn't make any sense in modern time for that price tag. Can do that. Let's play this.
Uncharted desert awaits.
And then this. And then should we evolve? I guess we should. Do that. And then play that. Here we have a game called Drunken Fight Simulator, which clearly this is going to be a low effort asset flip game. You can see it's already mixed. It's $1.99, English only. I need to hurry up. Yeah, I'm dragging, certainly. Gemetsu has El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron for PC with its first screenshots. This was a very interesting game when it came out originally 10 years ago. It never really got a sequel. It kind of got a spiritual sequel. The graphics probably aren't going to look particularly great, and they already had their like own unique art style, so it's not surprising that the graphics are going to feel a little weird. This is almost certainly a passion project as far as the creator of the game, and it clearly doesn't have a lot of support from any publisher or probably any audience really either. Can we play any amulets? Let's just do this, I guess. So play this with a 9. Why does it say 3? Oh, because I can play this right now.
This river of sorrow will flood.
Right, and let's just go ahead and evolve. Prince of Cositus. Cositus? Is that? Yeah, Cositus. That's how you pronounce that. Moving on, TechRaptor has an audio article. Mario dances joyously with a new created 3D Mario rig. Joyously. This is available for free use in SFW projects. I don't know what SFW means in this case, whether that's safe for work. There's almost certainly going to be a DMCA, the takedown on this. Unlike, say, a real person where you could potentially build the likeness of a real person without calling it the same name, and maybe have a case for not copyright infringement, but still you'd have to fight in court. You have, in this instance, it being called Mario with iconic Mario 3D imagery and the iconic Mario hat. So, I mean, this is just straight up copyright infringement that obviously is not going to just get a endorsement by Nintendo. This is one of those instances where they've intentionally released an article talking about this, knowing that it was going to get removed fairly quickly. Union Burst 8 is about to happen. So we could go 7-7, and then we could make that 8-8. We could kill that. Or we can kind of wait. And do that. Didn't realize that was gonna work. Wow, that worked way better than I could have ever hoped. Alright, well, this next game is just called Black Baby, and it literally is just a black baby. Which, yeah, that's probably racist and offensive, on top of just being an asset flip. $4.99 English only. You run into a problem certainly when you have a game like this, and it clearly is just garbage. I mean, honestly, this might be one that even deserves to be flagged. Let's see what we can flag it for. You could flag it, I guess, for defamatory. Contains libelous or defamatory statements. We don't know if that's really true. We can only see the images, and the images are honestly, I'd much prefer the ability to flag it for just being a low quality game than defamatory, since I don't know for certain. So I'm not gonna bother to do either. But yeah, when you have a case where a game like Super Seducer is not allowed to be published because it's live action games, and then you fast track the Steam Direct $100 listing of a game like Black Baby, and it seems to go through in front of nobody's eyes, shows just a incredible inconsistency there as far as whether you're going to curate quality on your games or not. And at a certain level, it seems like there are just some people that have gotten on the poop list, or with Valve, and then new people are welcomed with open hands and open arms when they should just be more cautious. I think the way cancel culture and such is going these days, it is just going to be smart, and it probably was always smart, to know who you're doing business with first and foremost, and not be so open that you're willing to work with everybody. Which, ironically, that probably would include like YouTube too, where there is an argument where YouTube probably shouldn't let people like me do business with them at all and put content on their storefront, on their website. But at a certain point, then you also have to, of question whether YouTube is closer to something like Twitter and Facebook, where everybody's supposed to be allowed to talk, or almost everybody, versus Valve being a storefront where it's supposed to be selling you allegedly quality products, or products of any sort of a value. Moving on, Gamatsu has the Xbox Live Gold games for March announcements. It's going to be apparently Warface Breakout, Vicious Attack Llama Apocalypse, Metal Slug 3, and Port Royale 3. Seem pretty much none of these are recognizable except for Metal Slug 3. And Metal Slug 3 does not look like a particularly great game. And I think I may just take a nap. I turned off my heater / air conditioner back to its just default settings in an attempt to potentially save some money after having the heater on for so long last week. And apparently my settings since last time I adjusted them are still a little off, because I'm fairly warm at this point. But I don't know, I might also just be pulling a small fever. Yeah, that wouldn't really surprise me that much, as if I was somehow getting a small cold or something. Yeah, games with gold seems like it's nothing. I don't know, it's barely news to even talk about. I'm doing a lot of ahs and ums today too. Here we have a Gamma Sutra article. Iron Source has acquired playable and video advertisement platform Luna Labs. I believe playable in this case. Oh, I guess no. Playable is a descriptor here, not a name of a company. I guess that would make sense since it's lowercase. So playable ads. Yeah, that's the one thing I need to desperately do, is work on my router to get the ad blocker back up. It's definitely not fun living in a world where the internet is just overflowing with ads. It's gotten incredibly bad.
Yum-yums to fill my tum-tums.
Let's see. Evolve. Can't evolve anyways. Next we have a game on Steam called Stay in the Light, which looks like it's a dungeon crawler. They're calling it a first-person shooter with realistic as far as the tags go. Either this is a lot of polish on the last time we've seen this game, or this is a different game. There was definitely a game where you, I think we're supposed to stay in the light, and you were walking through a procedurally generated maze, and there was like a minotaur chasing after you. You can see this character has a mirror, and it was like a ray tracing demo more than a game. Apparently this has now been expanded as an idea. So yeah, this is the game I guess I can put on the fall list as a ray tracing demo, considering how I've done absolutely nothing with my ray tracing video card since getting it, except for play control. And Control's ray tracing ability on that wasn't particularly great.
Hey, no dirty tricks.
Hit this.
My blade is your salvation. I'm ready for more. What do we have here?
But also, I suppose it is worth saying that I am completely uninterested in ray tracing at this level. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Revisit Gothic horror in Dungeons and Dragons with Van Richen's Guide to Ravenclaw, which I guess that's the name of the game. This looks like this is a video game. Here you've got several monsters showing up in the mirror. Let's see. Dungeons and Dragons supplement. Oh, so this is actually a tabletop, game. Alright, so at the very least I kind of know where Dungeons and Dragons is getting its new content. Not that that really matters much, because even if there is a video game made based on Dungeons and Dragons, it seems to be fairly far behind. And I suppose that is a failure on Wizards of the Coast, who now owns Dungeons and Dragons, where they really should have made it their effort and their desire to have a digital version of every new expansion as close to day one as possible. Man, do I feel like I'm just stuttering full today. And it's more bearable when playing a visual novel to be a stuttering fool and barely being able to read the dialogue in front of you, but when you have to actually think of what you're saying, and that really feels terrible. Yeah. TechRaptor has an article here, how Session redefines skateboarding games. This is an opinion piece, basically. And I'm not 100% sure. I believe skateboarding games are going to make a big comeback ever. Sadly, one of the things that I think will probably hold back skating, and the concept of skating being interesting, is the fact that the police in the United States have just become seemingly more obvious and brazen about their aggressions and their willingness to shoot people. So it felt a lot safer when I was in junior high and high school to potentially go and skate in some place you're not supposed to skate and maybe get a ticket or get chased by the police, whereas now I'd be a little bit afraid if I were to want to go skate somewhere. I would be afraid that somebody's just going to straight shoot first and ask questions later. And if that's how I feel as somebody who's never skated and never was a skater, I can't help but assume that that's somewhat the attitude of potential new skaters. Well, this next game I'm looking at on Steam is called Dark Kilson, and it's a poorly drawn, like sketchbook drawn bear in like a horror game who seems to be completely naked with a black bar over his phallus, and this just feels incredibly crazy and weird. It's 89 cents, but it supports only Portuguese and Brazil language too, so yeah, just some weirdness there, some major weirdness there. And of course that's not a game that's going to make it to the fall list. Gamatsu has an article. Dungeon Defenders Awakened launches for the Xbox One on March 17th and the PS4 and Switch later in 2021. Do we have a bit of a trailer here? We haven't spent a lot of time watching trailers lately.
This one's for my family.
Time for me to prove
Yeah, it
myself.
seems like this is kind of a small level design, player versus player arena battler. or maybe not player versus player, maybe just small arena battler in general. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Days Gone PC version releases this spring and leads the PlayStation PC charge. So the Jim Ryan, the head of PlayStation, had an interview with GQ. What's funny here is that Giant Bomb said that this kind of made it feel like Jim Ryan was European and that PlayStation was now being run out of the European office, which is completely wrong. But at this point, me even listening to Giant Bomb is just a waste of time. It's like they're getting their information wrong. They're not reviewing but maybe one game a week at most between 8 people. They've got nothing to say. Of course, I've been saying I should stop listening to them for probably 6 months now, and I've failed to find something to unsubscribe from it. There is some weirdness, as it were, as far as releasing Days Gone, a game that undersold quite a bit and wasn't a particularly great game on PC. I mean, I guess they just want to recoup that money. And certainly we have seen that or we've wanted to see PlayStation games make their way to PC for a long time, so I'm happy for that part. I'm just not particularly happy for the for the quality of their first frontline release. Although in fairness, I guess Far Cry Primal might have been the first PC game that they've released of a generation. So, and that was a much better game. Days Gone also ran into problems where seemingly all the characters, all the zombies looked like they were darker skinned, and they got accused of racism. I believe there was also a point where in a demo or something they showed zombies of children running in large hordes after the main character. They certainly oversold the idea of large hordes of zombies playing a big role, and it really didn't. The main character is just not likable from what I recall. I think they got rid of the children models. I'm not sure there were ever any female zombie models, which also can bring about the idea of sexism and the fact that you're fighting just men zombies. But I'm sure plenty of games have managed to get away with things like that before. But overall, regardless of any of the original controversies that came out, or the non-controversies, frankly, that came out around Days Gone, the main problem with Days Gone generally is that it's just a generic zombie game in a world that really did not have time for a new generic zombie game. This is an interesting article because I have yet to see this reported by anyone else or repeated since yesterday. But you have this thegamer.com article. There's a report that Techland is bleeding talent due to autocratic management, bad feedback, and lack of direction, which, of all the complaints to have about management, these are very basic complaints and kind of pathetic complaints. Like, at the very least, when there's a Me Too style cancel complaint around a video game company, the accusations tend to be like fairly legitimate sounding, but just to break it down, autocratic management, as in management that demands all the power and they are authoritarian. That's pretty much every manager ever. Bad feedback, yeah, that's probably 99% of all managers. Lack of direction, yeah, that's probably another 99% of directors that they are idiots that aren't qualified to be managers, or very often their manager roles don't need to exist at all. It's always bureaucracy, and then at a certain level, if we had universal basic income, we could probably benefit a lot of managers and mid-managers anyways, because we could get them out of positions where they don't need to be and just have them sit at home. That would probably drive a lot of managers crazy too, not being able to bully or boss people around. Or you have just the normal assumption where all the low-level employees take the universal basic income and then they don't have any employees to manage anyways. Let's see. Yeah, getting feedback of it's poop is, I mean, you take that and you just take that feedback and you ignore it, pretty much. In fact, this is probably the feedback you would get from many game players anyways. At a certain level, if you know who you're talking to and you trust their own taste and their own ability to self-evaluate, coming back and saying it's poop isn't even bad, because I can definitely attest that if I had a manager and he said your YouTube content is poop, I'd be like, yeah, I know. I don't put enough time into it. I don't have the resources. I'm not enthusiastic about editing myself down and taking out all the ums and ahs, and I'm not trying to put on a personality or script anything. I don't need a manager personally to tell me things I already know. Whereas there are definitely some managers out there, and this is mostly me just being a contrarian at the moment saying all this, but there are managers out there certainly that will just repeat themselves and go over every single detail and just try and rail you and drive you crazy basically by nitpicking and nitpicking. This article says it was with 10 current and former Techland staff. That's pretty bad. The fish rots from the head is a quote that somebody used. Well, at a certain level, there might be slightly more than average truth to this. There also might be fact that Techland is kind of a European country, and all the European country workers are fairly laid back, so trying to compete in the rest of the world creates a work environment much closer to the working in the United States than what the employees of a European country might be willing to tolerate. Inherently, this is part of the problem with global trade and world trade as it is that if you are, particularly in Europe, which is heavy unionized and heavy worker rights, there is a lack of ability to abuse your employees compared to the United States or China. China is way worse about abusing employees, or Japan is another example of abusing employees. So this does kind of come out as mostly a whining situation. It's hard to tell if this is specifically one person, one manager, or all the managers, and it's hard to tell how many managers there are. there probably is some truth to this. Dying Light feels like it should have been out 2 to 4 years ago. Dying Light 2 should have been out 2 to 4 years ago. It feels like. So I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen that. They did instead release more expansions to Dying Light 1, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dying Light 2 kind of doesn't ever occur. This kind of sucks to see an article like this personally, because I have just bought Dying Light 1 in anticipation of yeah, I just bought Dying Light 1 in anticipation of trying to play it and getting it all the way covered before Dying Light 2 came out. This may very well be a case of Cyberpunk 2077 also being a warning shot across the bow as far as game publishers and game developers overworking and abusing their employees, and then that leading to a lower quality product. So we may find out that Dying Light 2 is pretty bad. If anything, there's probably a very good argument to not have serialized zombie games anyways, that they should be standalone stories. Even so, instead of having a game called Dying Light 2, there should just be a spiritual successor. From the creators of Dying Light, we have this new game in a new universe that tells a slightly different story with zombies. That would be a little weird, but not insanely weird.
Salvation lies in reasoned judgment.
Okay, let's hit
My
this.
blade is your salvation.
Wisdom is divinity. Be just.
If anything, there's a certain level of interest in just seeing if this article gets bigger coverage, or if it just kind of dies because nobody wants to confirm it, or nobody cares to publish that article, or Techland somehow manages to kill it. I wouldn't be surprised if Techland and many video game companies are able to kill certain stories. Moving on, we have a TechRaptor article here. Gran Turismo 7 has been delayed to 2020 due to COVID. A lot of delays certainly are going to come around and be blamed on COVID.
None can pierce my shield.
A painless death is the mercy I can afford you.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has been delayed indefinitely. Thus, the Epic Game Store has removed the ability to pre-purchase it. Apparently, so far they haven't said anything about refunding people who pre-purchased it. They not only have they delayed it indefinitely, they have split paths with the people working on the game, so there's definitely some problems there. Some suspect that maybe Bloodlines 2 is just never going to be anywhere as good as it had been hyped up and selling itself as. There's also suspicion that they didn't want to do a Cyberpunk 2077 type release. There's also suspicion that
Already a proper lady, you know.
that it is just bad blood between the creators and the developers. That would also make sense.
Of light. Show your might.
I have that suspicion. The delay indefinitely and not being willing to work with somebody to the actual release of a game is fairly unusual in the video game world, particularly after the game had been announced and had a release date. Here's the full image. Let's see. Bloodlines 2 is still in development. They made the decision that Hardsuit Labs will no longer be leading the development. They will no longer be releasing in 2021. This may be that they are just, it's stuck in development hell though. The way this is phrased, they say leading the development instead of the idea that they've completely parted ways. So it may be that there was another story I saw that said they parted ways. Which stories like this can just get bigger and bigger, and you can get little bits of details that explain things more than what the official release will say. Of course, also, they can snowball with fake news and wrong information. Gematsu has this article. Sony Interactive Entertainment has, quote, strong ties to Japanese licensees will continue to strengthen going forward. This is Jim Ryan, the CEO. However, there's no comment on new titles by the Japanese studio. The Japanese specifically don't believe this, I don't think, and you can definitely see how Gematsu took this same GQ article and focused specifically on the Japanese bend on that story, which I'm sure Jim Ryan was hoping for them not to do that. 3 defense, 10 ally. Let's see. This. This.
Is that how you treat a lady?
But yeah, it's really hard to believe anything they say, though, as yeah, the Japanese don't seem to really believe what Jim Ryan says as far as PlayStation. It'd be very weird, particularly at this moment, for them to come back strong during like the Christmas season of 2021 and have a whole bunch of Japanese licensed game. Next we have on Steam a game called Otaku's Rage Waifu Strikes Back. It's tagged with nudity. I could probably show it actually. It's poorly drawn, big busted anime girls. Seems like we're getting a larger growing number of these games, and it seems like the actual gameplay is just match 3 for $1.59 English Russian. So yeah, seems like we are going to increasingly see more of that kind of game until Steam decides to stop letting that type of game being listed. If anything, I think you've probably got the same argument here that you could make with Super Seducer 3, if not even more, because at the very least Super Seducer 3 is going through the effort of Super Seducer 3 is at least going through the effort of recording actual live action video. The biggest announcement I think from Sony is that they're developing a next generation VR system for the PlayStation 5, which arguably they said it's not coming anytime soon, so arguably it probably is going to be done right about the time the PlayStation 6 is being announced. They also didn't bother to create any new PlayStation camera for the PlayStation 5. So I think you're basically using the PlayStation Eye from the PS3 still. Which almost certainly I would have to assume needs to be some kind of refresh to that just for higher quality images when the new VR system comes out, assuming it needs a camera. They also said that they're working on the controller to integrate better controller features
You must die.
as far as what you would use, so no more of the microphone type things. Yeah, I briefly thought about building a Raspberry Pi that could be used as a karaoke machine. Particularly the Raspberry Pi 4 that has 2 HDMI outputs might be useful there, to have one that shows the output, one monitor, and one monitor that shows the software. But I'm fairly certain I'm not going to bother to try and build that project. There's a couple pieces of software that look interesting. One that would be voice acted, so you could just say play this specific song and it would be able to look up through voice detection the specific song, instead of having to have somebody look up a song and build up a queue of songs first and foremost. But the implementation of it isn't 100% guaranteed that it would run smoothly, and using CDG files or MP3 plus G files, or to put the text would require different software. It's not going to be a simple pre-build thing. It would be a lot of jerry-rigging, almost certainly, as a project. And I just don't think I have a target audience. Getting microphones is fairly cheap. You can spend about $60 to get a decent 2 pair of microphones, and then if you want to go 4, you're talking probably $180 at that point. You probably don't need 4 microphones for a karaoke machine, but you wouldn't want to only have one either. One of the softwares specifically just goes to YouTube to find the music, where everything else would be preloaded music, and that is where a level of work is going to come down to. It is pretty much any time I've had to deal with any music, I've kind of regretted it for the amount of level of curation that requires, and particularly as somebody who doesn't really listen to music, and having not a very firm grasp on what pop songs are interesting. The curating a good list of songs would be fairly hard for me, particularly since I haven't really even been listening to music in the past decade. Okay. Discard a card. Rush. +1/+1. Alright, so if we do this, and then what? I think I'm pretty much don't want to do anything else. But yeah, there is an idea there. There certainly is a project that would make sense if you had a large group of people who are big in the karaoke, which arguably in the West there probably isn't a large group of people that are in the karaoke. There are machines certainly you can get, and machines would be cheaper in the short run. They would take more space and they would play CDs, and you'd have a cheap microphone and a cheap speaker system, and maybe a monitor, maybe not. There are also karaoke machines out there that don't specifically have monitors on them, so you can sing into them all you want, but you're not getting the prompt as far as yeah, you're just not getting the prompt as far as the words, which that's at a certain point not really karaoke at all.
absence.
You're a solid fighter.
Let's see, trying to burn through the news. I have a lot of articles here that are pretty much the same thing. See, when you hear Gamma Sutra here, it says Paradox has removed Hardsuit Labs as Bloodlines 2 developer, and the title is delayed indefinitely. There is some game, I feel like, that was a Vampire the Masquerade game that has released in the past year or two. It was like a side game.
Let the duel begin.
They're saying they pulled them from the project, but I don't feel like that was the actual announcement. The quote here is they will no longer be leading the development of it, which means they could certainly still be working with them in an assistive role. It may just be that they're no longer in charge or doing the vast majority of the work. A unnamed new studio has already been hired to finish work on the game. It would be incredibly flippant for it to be a case of them just going with a new studio because they wanted to, or they liked the new studio. That'd be insane. You would start a new project with a new studio and not have them come in and rescue an old project.
Aegis transformation! Holy gem!
Let's see. There's a quote here. The game is very important to us, and it has been an ambitious project from the very start. In order to meet our goals for it, we came to the conclusion that change is needed, and the result, more development time is required. Yeah. Undoubtedly, the thing about Bloodlines 2 is that it wants to be a AAA game, even though Bloodlines 1 really isn't, or really never was. But, yeah, it should have been a AAA game from the beginning. It's still going to be kind of a niche game, however, so you are stuck between a rock and a hard place with that, because if they made Bloodlines 2 look like Cyberpunk and sold it, it would not sell like Cyberpunk. There's just a certain percentage of people that are not going to play a sequel to a vampire role-playing game based on live-action role-playing of vampires. So yeah, they need to keep everything in scale and just try to do the best they can with the graphics and the story so it's not super long. Moving on, Libretto has this new engine called Genesis Plus GX Wide, which specifically what it does is it is now taking Genesis games and making them render at wider resolutions. Let's see if we can see some footage here. This is kind of a experimental. So here you have like Mortal Kombat 2. Normally you can see there's not a ton of space in between the edges and the life bars. And we jump a bit forward, you can see the widescreen version of this. Now, the Genesis inherently, I don't think, was ever designed to be at like a 16:9 ratio or different resolutions, so it is kind of shocking that you could even get any progress here. You could kind of cheat this somewhat easily by simply having the scrolling have pixel memory, so it's not like the game itself was actually rendering the edges, but there's an effect we saw where the effect went all the way to the edge of the screen with the oil dripping. So it is actually being rendered in engine, which I am a little bit shocked that they've been able to get that to work. However, at a certain point, there is also a level of
You look kind of haunted. No, literally.
There's a level where that is just not accurately emulating what the game looks like. I don't think too many people would care about that. It might also make the games run worse or introduce new bugs. It might be fairly easier than it seems to also eliminate or just change the internal resolution of something. Right, well, could we do this? Currently, this is only available for these operating systems, so Raspberry Pi not being included here, but like Windows and Linux certainly is included as far as widescreen. Inherently, if you can get widescreen to work on the Genesis, it would be nice to get widescreen to work on everything before and around the Genesis era. So like NES games in widescreen probably would be fairly nice. You can certainly stretch pixels to make things fit that way, but I don't think that this is just a pixel stretching filter. There might be something specific about how Genesis hardware worked that lets you render more resolution, more widescreen than compared to other games. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are mods out there or cores out there that already stretch out like NES games, and I'm just not in deep enough to know about them. Moving on, Gematsu has an article here. The PlayStation Play at Home initiative returns with a free Ratchet and Clank, a Funimation offer, and more. So, let's see. Starting March 25th, Funimation, a joint venture of Sony Picture Entertainment and Aniplex of Japan, will have extended access for new subscribers to Funimation or Walk Any in countries they are available. So that almost in a weird way pushes to a lack of focus on the part of PlayStation that their Play at Home initiative is a Ratchet and Clank game, which is not a first party title from PlayStation, and promoting anime instead of actually playing games. And you really are not going to be able to make the argument these days that the PlayStation 5 at its price tag is really an anime watching DVD player. You can't recapture the success that the PlayStation 2 had as being a cheap, good quality DVD player. Yeah, and in all fairness, if DVDs had not succeeded or the PlayStation 2 had not played DVDs, then there's a decent argument that the PlayStation 2 would have failed and we would have never seen Sony as a real competitor to Nintendo originally and then Microsoft later. And if anything, then Microsoft and Nintendo would be probably fairly well suited to split up the gamer player base between young kids and older kids.
Yeah, I love this job. Of course I do.
here's the Bloodlines 2 announcement trailer on TechRaptor, which here you can see it's tagged as not actual gameplay, but you can see how there's a lot of ambition here to have it be a 3D hyper realistic looking game with several vampire abilities, each of which could be the selling point of their own experience. And I guess the tall lady from Resident Evil vampire beats this big busted vampire lady by quite a bit. Yeah, it seems like there's going to be just a decent amount of running and jumping too, looking at the announcement trailer. But yeah, and then they show this whole city, and so they're also promising a fairly open world environment too. So yeah, you can see there's almost certainly a massive amount of overpromise in something like this.
I feel the emptiness.
Okay,
You've been chosen.
You're mean!
guess just hit that. That's probably the best we can do. Yeah, so
A fitting end.
yeah, I kind of had hoped that Bloodlines was good, but I was never fairly
No.
overhyped that it would. I'm not even sure it's really worth playing Bloodlines 1. That's why I haven't, in part, gotten around to thinking about playing it. Here we have a game from 1997 called Combat Chess. This is obviously around the idea of battle chess. So, yep, there's definitely some stuff. Somebody's calling me right now. I'm not gonna bother to answer it. Suppose what you have to do for something like this as an old game, it's probably not worth owning Combat Chess as a rip-off of Battle Chess. But it's $3.99, English allegedly full audio. I'll put it on the following list just to see if maybe there was some fandom for this. This also is not a developer who has anything else on Steam, but the publisher is seemingly known for releasing Bad Ratio and Flat Out, and yeah, I guess there's some other games here that they seem to be more positive than negative, although a lot of these games don't look particularly well memorable. Right, well, let's see. I think we have to do this
Be gone.
if we want to survive.
I'll devour you all.
Well, this is gonna make Friday really long, but I think I want to wrap up here. So let's just go through the news, and if there's any more games on Steam, I'm gonna leave them for Friday. So Komatsu has Bandai Namco Entertainment Europe acquiring a minority stake in Limbic Entertainment. They're apparently going to produce new franchises. They worked on Tropico 6, Memories of Mars, and Heroes of Might and Magic. And I'm not sure any of those games are relatively relevant anymore. A game called Dark Moonlight has been announced for PC. Here we have a trailer we can skip through. So yeah, it seems like maybe a guy is getting his brain scanned and having a nightmare. Maybe, maybe not. A lot of these trailers definitely try to catch your attention, and then the games come out and they are basically nothing. There's another game where you go through somebody's nightmares, so it feels like somebody stole the idea or leaked the idea to some developer, and so we're gonna have 2 or 3 games around that idea. Not that that's even particularly that unique of an idea. The monsters in this do look more recognizable and less blobs of darkness. Of course, this being announced, it has a Steam page, but no release date or anything like that, so there really is just no reason to even put it on the fall list at this point. Gamma Sutra now has a GDC showcases platinum sponsors, connecting to the audience with the power of Facebook. So they're self-promoting again, or cross-promoting again. A game called Bomb Rush Cyberpunk has been delayed to 2022, which I feel like I may have seen this in passing, but yeah, I don't know what it is. It looks like it's a Jet Set Radio clone, perhaps without the spray painting, which that's cool and all. Although I maybe it does have the spray painting. It does. Oh, so it's a spiritual clone of Jet Set Radio. I kind of have to question whether Jet Set Radio itself was ever a well-designed game. That would be my main complaint around it, is that it's not particularly polished or designed well enough for its time. But it certainly failed to create a whole new genre in an era when a lot of games were creating new genres that became long-lasting, or at least 2 or 3 genres were created. We really haven't seen a new genre or style of gameplay basically since the Nemesis system in Shadow of Mordor. It's probably the last time I saw anything technologically new or different. I've also failed miserably here to get any victories, and I'm just going to call it at this point to not even bother to play. TechRaptor has a post-mortem or retrospective of Postal 4, which, yeah, it is definitely approaching around the ideas. Was Postal 4 needed? Or is it needed? I think they're working on Postal 5 now, but maybe they are just working on 4. Seemingly I'm not getting any I'm not getting deduplication, it feels like, or I'm just getting the same articles about the same things. Cyberpunk 2077 update 1.2 has been delayed. So, yeah, after massive delays and disappointment, Cyberpunk is still disappointing. The GameStop CEO, or CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Jim Bell's resigned. I assume this is more than anything probably because they're trying to cash out and abandon ship. Like, I could definitely see them selling. Like, GameStop, according to these numbers, is at $50 per share, where they were down to like $12 a share in the past. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people on the board in particular did try to sell their own shares of the game, of the store, at its peak of 340. But yeah, GameStop still as a company doesn't probably justify $50 a share of value. Maybe it does. Maybe there's a way if you got the right people in there. At a certain point, though, if you wanted to own all the stores and all of the stuff that GameStop already has, the delivery lines and people and employees and all of that, you might be willing to pay ridiculous amounts of money to become a majority shareholder of GameStop and turn it around and put some people in charge that put some people on the board that really care about GameStop and want to make it run as a business, instead of the people who intentionally ran Toys R Us and KB Toys into the ground, which I believe those are the people that are in charge of GameStop at the moment. So the irony there is, if enough people had enough money to buy GameStop stock, particularly if it's preferred stock, you may very well find that there is a whole new group of people in charge of GameStop, and they might be able to turn around the company and make it a much better type of company, easier than starting a new company and having to acquire a whole bunch of locations and go through all that work. It would take many years to build up to the level of GameStop at this moment. Anyways, moving on. I did want to talk about this game on Steam. It's called Old School RuneScape. I don't know if this really is RuneScape. It is from Jagex, but they are selling it with DLC memberships of up to $180. Although I suppose if you just got the 12 months membership in the soundtrack, you would be paying $90. It seems like you can play it free to play. I feel like this has already been on Steam for a while. Yeah, it says 2013. So they've just potentially changed the gameplay, the listing. Or perhaps this is a case of them changing the name from RuneScape to Old School RuneScape. Which I guess we can check and see what RuneScape looks like. Frankly, it looks pretty much the same with only slightly better graphics. And the max pack on this is $129. Seems like you're getting ripped off if you want to play RuneScape one way or the other. And I just don't think I would ever have enough fandom of that. Apparently there is this gaming magazine, GAY, that is doing a Gaming Awards 2021. They got retweeted by one of the developers. It seems a little weird, frankly, that you would need to give specific awards to video games focused around LGBTQ games. That feels like, if anything, that should be just a side category in a more impressive awards category, or a games for change type category. It was Rocksteady, which is Warner Brothers, I believe. Rocksteady Studios that retweeted them. It also is kind of a segregationist almost idea that gay people only play gay games, or that gay people specifically play gay games, and it's just not true. There aren't that many gay games out there that are good and frankly that exist at all. And I would much prefer to run into the statistics if you told me that 30% of all the population in a certain area were gay or LGBTQ, then I would be fine with that many percentage of people being in every game being that way. And certainly in role-playing games you want the options. We still have some like Mass Effect elements that let some characters be gay and some characters not be gay. And nobody would say Mass Effect is a gay game, not realistically. And if you're going to have an annual awards ceremony for those kinds of games, you're going to scrape the bottom of the barrel quite a bit, because I imagine there aren't more than a dozen games that come out each year. So it'll be interesting if I can maybe catch the awards after they've been announced to see what games they even mention. But yeah, I feel like that's oddly segregationist. It does inherently provoke the meme lords out there, the trolls out there, to say, when are we gonna get the straight awards where it's all straight characters in games? Let's see. I would also say there's a decent chance that most games that are heavy around a character being gay are also adult games, sex games. So if you were to have a adult entertainment awards for video games, then again, that would be a category where that could be half the categories, frankly, under adult categories of games. Moving on, Star Wars Republic Commando is coming to the PS4 and Switch on April 6th. I have no idea what this is. It's apparently a first-person tactical shooter. Must have just been announced. It doesn't feel like it's a particularly interestingly titled game, like Republic Commando instead of Stormtrooper or Clone Trooper. Seems weird. These look like clone troopers to me, but maybe they're trying to get away from the idea of using the phrase clone troopers. Let's see. Well, this page wants to load. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Tencent has grabbed a minority stake in TerraTech developer Payload Studios, so yet another company that Tencent is buying out. And let's keep on going. A game called Hamidashi Creative for the PS4 and Switch launches June 24th in Japan, which this looks like a visual novel. We haven't had a lot of announcement for Japanese games lately. Turok and Turok 2 Seeds of Evil for the PlayStation 4 and launches February 25th, or now in countries where it is February 25th, which being the 24th, I guess maybe that's the case. Turok is a game I never played when I was younger. I think it is fairly influential, but I also think I'd have a fairly hard time justifying playing Turok 1 or Turok 2 without a full reboot of the series, which I'd be very happy if they did remake and reboot the series. But in its current state, no, I don't think I want to play it. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Thunderful has acquired bridge constructor publisher HeadUp for $13.3 million, which I feel like Bridge Constructor made the Portal spin-off game, but maybe not. HeadUp definitely is a company I recognize as a publisher or a developer, so that might cover some other games. See, and TechRaptor says it differently and says that it was acquired for 11 million euros, and that they are also going to be working on some new properties. Currently, Thunderful has 4 brand new SteamWorld games in development. First 2 are expected to arrive in 2022, then 1 in 2023. The SteamWorld franchise is inconsistent as far as what the type of gameplay is, which is an interesting idea, but I'm not sure it really is caught on. Void TRLM Void Terrarium ++ is coming to North America on May 18th and Europe on May 21. I feel like this is probably an updated version of a game that's already been out. Either that or this game has been advertising itself and pushing itself for quite a while, which wouldn't be that weird either, because this is the typical way in which Japanese game developers promote their games. This Void Terrarium is kind of a weird game where you're playing as this coral girl with a coral sticking out of her eye socket. And looks like it's a dungeon crawler more than I thought it was. I thought it was just actually aquarium simulator, but it seems to have more gameplay than I thought it did. Gamatsu has an article here. Narita Boy launches March 30th. It's available for Xbox Game Pass for console and PC at launch. Narita Boy looking to be kind of a pixely Team 17 developed game. Yeah. When I see games with this kind of graphics, I just never really know if the gameplay might be particularly good. Suppose the announcement of Daft Punk breaking up and stopping to be Daft Punk probably doesn't affect video games. This kind of reminds me of Daft Punk. I'm not sure they even had any of their songs in any video game, but you would kind of think that they would squeeze at least a couple of games out, a couple of songs onto games. I'm sure there are some Daft Punk songs on like the Rock Band series of games. The puzzle platformer World Splitter for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC launches in 2021. This looks like one of those games where you slice the world in half, probably to affect gravity or something. Let's see. You drag it and spin it instead of just drawing a mouse over an area. But I'm not really sure what the difference is between splitting the world. I guess it's because the world is very different. It's not just changing the visuals of the world, it's changing what actually is in it. It might be a game there. That's all going to be around level design more than anything else. Akiba's Trip, Hellbound, and Debriefed, Gon-chan, and Nobu-kun trailers are now available, so they're gonna continue to promote this HD re-release of the first Akiba's Trip game, this time it being released in the West. This is a tabletop article, so we don't need to talk about that. And then Gamasutra has an article here. A proposed settlement for a years-long class action suit against Epic Games is saying it will give you in-game cash for Fortnite and Rocket League players. These, I think, this kind of settlement almost certainly is not going to be approved. But you never really know. Particularly with arbitration, I wouldn't be surprised if a settlement like that is approved. I would think that is incredibly unfair to potentially force somebody to play a game that they very well may not even still want to play years later to recover their losses through in-game content that has no cash value in any other scenario whatsoever. Well, that brings me to the Humble Bundle. We have a Tales of Love and Adventure bundle, which Tales of Monkey Island from Telltale, although I don't know if Telltale still owns it, for $1, not a terrible price. And then Tales of Batman Shadow Edition for more than the average of $7.96, but I already own that, so that would be a hard choice for me. You have Neon Cab, a game called Half Past Fate, which looks like it's a romance game, and then a game called Reventure, which I don't recognize either. So you should check that one out. Well, we can just click here and see if there's anything we can see. Oh, well, I can see why I would have immediately dismissed this game. It looks like a Game Boy game. If you pay $12, you get Black Sad Under the Skin and Hive Swap Act 2. And then if you pay $15, you get Indivisible. Remember, there was controversy around Indivisible in particular, so I'm not sure a lot of people would want to buy Indivisible at this point because it's shaky whether there'd ever be a sequel or whether even Indivisible as a finished game is polished and actually finished. And the controversy around Indivisible was that the developer seemed to be a jerk, and or that people were trying to do a hostile takeover over his company, and he wouldn't cooperate one way or the other. Take your pick. Like, he probably was a jerk, but also being the owner of the company, he kind of has that prerogative, whether it's fair or not. Now I'm on my Twitter feed looking for new bits of news, and hopefully there isn't. Apparently Turok 2 Seeds of Evil online multiplayer is coming to the Switch and PlayStation version 2. CheckRaptor has a Honeypop 2 questions and answers guide, so you could cheat through all the dating parts. Ubisoft Montreal is listing job listings. Several job listings. The Anthem rework has been cancelled, and instead they're going to focus on Broken Age and Mass Effect, which is almost certainly the right move. They were going to try and redo the art and make Anthem work and be desirable, and I don't think anybody cares enough about Anthem. It just failed from the word go. A Frogger TV show is looking for 4 contestants, or looking for multiple contestants, and it's not what you think. So I don't know if that means you're actually going to be playing Frogger on TV, or if you're going to be in a Frogger suit acting out the events of Frogger. I'm still scrolling down my Twitter feed. My right click is not responding as well as I would like. I wonder if my mouse is wearing out. It would be a little premature. Caligula 2 for the PS4 has put out some new screenshots. PS4 and Switch. So they're still promoting and working on that. Let's see. Yeah, and we've only been streaming for like 2 hours and 17 minutes. I definitely could have gone longer if I wanted to. A little bit longer. Actually, I have about 10 tabs, so it would probably benefit me just to finish it. So yeah, here's the article from Gamasutra. BioWare has canceled plans for the Anthem rework and shifts focus to Dragon Age and Mass Effect, which that makes sense. Mass Effect needs a lot of work, and Dragon Age is not going to go well if they don't put a lot of work into it. TechRaptor has an article here. The Anthem horror game spin-off debuts. The Arkham horror game, video game spin-off, debuts next month. Arkham being a tabletop game. Arkham Horror being a tabletop game. Well, this looks like an actual game, not just a board game from Asmodee Digital. Although, the problem there is Asmodee Digital has never been particularly good about making video games. So if they pull this off and this turns out to actually be a good game, and these aren't just like cutscenes, even if these are cutscenes, if they're just decent cutscenes, that would be a step up for Asmodee Digital. But yeah, I would like to see this one particularly turn into a success, so that maybe they could turn over a new leaf and actually make good versions of board games going forward, instead of low effort versions of board games. But arguably they might sell the same regardless. This is $15.99, which, yeah, for what I'm seeing, $15.99 is not terrible. But you could certainly see an idea of it being $10 if it was just a board game to digital versions. Here's Ubisoft Montreal's job listings. They have an animation programmer, a generalist programmer, technical art director. You usually don't have generalist programmers listed. Technical art director, concept art artist, characters, online programmer, technical designer. I assume online programmer means netcode. Team lead for programming, a scrum master. I have no idea what that is. Let's see. Lead the development team in charge of providing data to internal business partners by inspiring and driving team to deliver amazing features. That's a weird phrase. A storage admin with several storage things. 30 plus petabytes to enable our productions and players globally. That's a lot of data. Senior data developer, lead 2D 3D artist, senior marketing manager, strategy. So that's a lot of jobs. They're scaling up. Of course, you're also talking about working for Ubisoft, which has had several controversies. If anything, they may very well just be scaling up employees in Montreal, Canada, so that they can fend off any strikers or unions in France. And France as a country is having more and more problems as far as its stability and its economy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to move jobs from one place to another. Here is Tech Raptor, a Frogger TV show, is looking for contestants for NBC's Peacock. In this upcoming game, it looks like the players will be the ones dodging obstacles. Yeah. That's what I would have thought, is that it probably would have been too boring to have somebody playing Frogger, the game. So instead, they're just making a game sort of like Frogger, where the contestants maybe wear frog suits, maybe don't even bother to do that, and they have to dodge obstacles. See, Cappy Games is still promoting people. I don't know if this is an intern, but they're promoting this Tamara Jaree, which is a narrative designer who seems to either have made a single cover art or an entire comic book, which, interesting. I would assume that these are actual comic books. I don't recognize them, though. Although, in all fairness, once you get outside of DC and Marvel, it's fairly easy to not recognize things. Here we have a game on Steam called Typed 82. Since we only have like 5 games, we might as well just go through all these. This is clearly a typing game. $4.99 English only, third-party EULA. I don't see anything there. Here we have a game called Gun Duel, which just looks pixely. Early access, free to play, English only. Here we have a game called Pixel Game Maker Series Remote Bomber, which looks like an old arcade game. Not interesting. $9.99. It's been made by Pixel Game Maker MV, which they are selling for $84.99. Which, yeah, that's the real sell there. Here we have a game called Doomsday Hero, which is a little zoomed in as a platform shooter. There might be something here. Maybe. Probably not. I can't 100% tell that this is garbage, but I'm leaning towards it being garbage. It's early access. It's $2.39. It's English Chinese. Put on the fall list. We haven't even today had to really get into the whole flood of Chinese low quality games, which really goes to show how what's on Steam in particular was just completely down. And I curated a lot. Here we have one called Jet Scout Boot Camp, which, yeah, top down. Actually, it looks like a rocket platforming avoidance game. It's free, English only, but it also looks like garbage. So, yeah, that's not coming to the fall list. Then we have a game just called Snowboard, which is blocky, and it doesn't look like it has a lot of variety in where you can snow in the different types of hills. Just looks a little too asset flippy. $5.99 English only. No to that. Alright, and with that, that puts me in a very good position because I've covered everything of importance. Oh wait, there's this article. It took TechRaptor a while to get to this article. I'd seen a YouTuber talk about this, but it was almost not worth really talking about. But since TechRaptor is covering it, a Illinois state rep wants to ban violent video games in general, not age restrict them at all. Just any adult could not play them. No one could play them. The good news is that the Supreme Court has come down very sternly and obviously on the edge of free speech on this, that the U.S. government is not allowed to ban almost anything. They can age restrict things, and there might be some kind of way to try and jump around this. What's going on in Illinois, I don't know, but this is definitely just a politician grandstanding and being an idiot to get attention. It would never stay constitutional. That isn't to say that they might be able to ban a few games for a few months, but as soon as it got to the Supreme Court, they would immediately knock it down. They can age restrict, and certainly, like, if somebody wanted to ban all snuff films, for instance, there's reasons why you could probably ban that, and they have banned that last I heard. But you can't just even ban porn because of the free speech and the constitutionality of that. But they certainly could age restrict it. There would be potentially an argument to be made to say you could age restrict all violent video games to somebody who is 40 years old or older, or 50 or 60 or 70, which at that level, that is effectively banning it for everyone. If you go too high there, the courts would again shoot it down as being an effective ban of all sales. But also, I think people might argue that violent video games, depending on who's defining a violence, which that gets into a whole second issue, should potentially be age gated to people that are age 18 or older. There is definitely a point where kids have been allowed to buy games that are rated M for mature at stores, and there not been any real law stopping it, although enforcement of the law may be more of an issue than actually having the law there. But then also you run into the problem of who defines violent, because there's definitely some violence in games for very young kids, and if that's banned too, that makes really no sense. It also gets to a point in like Danganronpa, where Danganronpa is a Japanese visual novel for what feels like at most edgy 16 or 17-year-old Japanese high school students, because it's not like it's a smart story or a smart game or even a challenging game. But there's a lot of sex jokes in the English localization of it, and there's a lot of stuff that you would definitely have parents find objectionable in Danganronpa. So, I mean, it kind of comes down to the parent themselves as what they want their kids to see, and you have things that make that even more obvious in Japanese anime when you have things like Case Closed, which is a kids show, murder mystery show, or it's called Case Closed in the West. It's called Detective Conan everywhere else. Yeah, in every episode of Detective Conan, somebody is violently murdered. But it is a kids show for little kids, like 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And nobody bats an eye on that because it's kind of age appropriate, even though there is a murder. And it's a murder mystery Sherlock Holmes type show. So yeah, there's some weirdness there. And yeah, the idea of any government person regulating what you can and can't enjoy as an adult, or what you can and can't let your own children enjoy, is like really objectionable to almost all United States citizens. So I doubt this law will pass. The state representative is apparently trying to pass this in a response to an increase in carjackings, which I fail to see the connection whatsoever there. That seems ridiculous. If anything, there would be less carjackings if people are at home playing video games, not more. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.